I am Groot.
I'm Steve Rogers.
I am Mike Royer.
And I'm Chris Dillard.
It's not a bird, it's not a plane, it's Superhero Slate. It's a modern podcast where we talk about everything that's great, like movies, TV, superheroes. It's Superhero Slate. Oh yeah.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Superhero Slate, the show where we run down the latest superhero entertainment news.
We love TV, movies, and superheroes, so let's talk it all out.
My name is Chris Dillard.
And my name's Mike Royer.
And this is a Superhero Slate review for Avengers Infinity War.
Holy cow. This film, some would argue, is 10 years in the making since the first Iron Man came out in 2008. We have been building up Thanos, I believe, 2011?
12.
Or 12?
Yeah,
so
12.
It's been in the making. I think it's the first time the cinema has ever really experienced something quite like this, and I think it's awesome that it's kind of hitting this a crucially nerdy area of pop culture. You know, they could have possibly done this with a science fiction movie. Maybe they could have done this with some sort of like drama series or detective noir or fantasy series. Probably would have been the most realistic in the past, but bam, a comic book movie finally builds up all of this work to Avengers Infinity War, and we are here to review it. We're going to start off spoiler-free the best we can, but this movie is going to be incredibly hard to talk about and review without mentioning the plethora that happened in this movie. I think you'd agree with me, Chris.
Oh, I would. I mean, I think going in dark was one of the hardest things to do, but also one of the biggest payoffs in any movie I've watched recently. You know, there are lots of shocks and surprises and things that you don't expect. Even we could speculate. We've been speculating for years, Mike, and I still think we were wrong about a lot of stuff.
Yeah, that was actually really surprising, and it's not just necessarily what was coming out of other fans' mouths or other like news outlets, like even straight, I feel like from Kevin Feige and like the directors of this movie. Like, I don't think that they were straight up lying to us, but I think they just wanted to kind of subvert expectations a little bit. So I actually kind of appreciate that. You know, there's shots in the trailer that you can't trust. You know, I've started to figure out more and more recently that I feel like a lot of like B and C cuts that don't make it in the movie is actually what makes it to the trailer. So you got a lot of different line reads for lines in this movie. You got different shots. I decided just for the heck of it to go back and watch the final trailer for this movie, which is something I skipped out on because I wanted to go in more fresh. And even in the final trailer that I think just came out a couple days ago, if not maybe last week.
The final trailer was the one we watched with the tickets. There's been other things since then.
I think what I'm talking about is the final TV spot.
Oh, okay.
So there's even line reads in that was like, well, Bucky didn't say that in the movie. So like even up until the very last minute, Marvel is doing its best to keep you from seeing the movie, I guess, technically. Real quick, we usually like to talk a little bit about our theater going experiences, because I truly believe that if you're not lucky enough to somehow weasel your way into some sort of critics review screening, where I would assume everybody's on their best behavior, we go out with the general masses like everybody else, but we always go on Thursday nights because that's when, you know, that's where the biggest fans are. So I had a relatively pleasant theater going experience. I was luckily surrounded by people that knew how to just keep their stuff to themselves, their conversations, their whispers. The only pet peeve that's kind of been building up over the last couple viewings at movie theaters is I would assume your movie theater sells nachos, correct?
I don't know. I'm not eating movie theater nachos.
Well, most theaters do. And usually with those nachos, there's a condiment bar that sells like pickled jalapenos. And that's fine. I don't eat them, but people, you got to realize those things smell. If you're sitting right next to somebody else and you decided to be one of those weirdos that just piles and piles and piles on those pickled jalapenos instead of putting on just a couple, like on your hot dog or nacho chips, you can smell those the entire freaking movie. So people, you need to be more considerate about the people around you. But luckily, that scent wears off after a certain half-life of the life of a jalapeno.
Once they're eaten, you can't smell them anymore.
Yeah, so that's my only gripe. But overall, I was totally engaged in this movie. Chris, what about you? How was your theater?
That was great. I mean, again, we did IMAX. I was able to go, my wife and two friends, two listeners of the show, and co-hosts. They've been on the show several times, Jason Ambrositis and John Myers. So you guys listening, thanks for going. We actually, since we had reserved seats, we went to eat at like Buffalo Wild Wings beforehand. So we didn't like have to go buy theater food or anything like that. So we just ate, predicted some stuff, walked right in, sat down, and then the movie started a few minutes later. So it was pretty straightforward, really. There was a couple people, like, we have assigned seats, someone, like, one, I don't know if he was a theater security guard or some sort of, like, type of mall cop. He's like, if you're not in the right seat, we will stop the movie, kind of thing. And there's, like, and I was like, that's totally, I would totally be upset if someone was, like, in my seat that I paid for. And there's, like, a couple jackasses in the theaters who thought they were smart people, like, making jokes. And I'm like, whatever, dudes, just shut up and watch the movie. But during the movie, nothing happened. Like, I was fine. I regulated my beverage intake all day. Just a couple cans of soda and a Mountain Dew or two. Not too much water that's going to run through me. So I didn't have to go the whole time, thankfully. Wow. And had a good time, really, just hanging out with everybody and taking it all in. It was I don't normally usually reach over and smack someone and be like, oh my God, during a movie, but this one made me do that a few times, and that was really cool. So
Well, it has been roughly about 12 hours, give or take, since we've gotten out of the movie, and we're pretty well known for going radio silence once we come out of these movies, because we like to save our initial reactions for when we get on this mic right here. So usually I like to think, I wonder what Chris thought about this movie, because sometimes we're divided, sometimes we're not. But Chris, I want you to tell me right now your spoiler-free review, the best you can for this movie, and I'm going to see if I'm right.
I think so. To me, you said it's 10 years in the making. I really, really like this movie, but dang, do I want to see the next one. I got to see where it goes. I'm really hyped for it. I really want to go back and watch it again. It was really fun. It puts you through the proverbial blender, Mike. You're going to feel all sorts of emotions. There are times people were laughing so loud you couldn't hear the next line in the theater. There are times when people are tearing up. This will ring you out through every emotion in this movie. And that is a testament to this movie, I think, that you're invested in these characters. You care about them. You care about the fates of this universe and the galaxies and all this stuff in it. And I had a really good time, and I really, really look forward to going back several more times, even though it is like 2.5 hours long on every viewing. So I've got to say, overall, I can't rank it yet. Again, like you said, we're too early. We're way too early. Can't rank it, but it does like if you just watch the Avengers movies or even all the other ones, this is a hell of a payoff, I feel, in the long run. So that's where I sit, Mike. You like to like dangle things in front of me that are not true sometimes, much like Marvel does. So, Mike, where do you sit on this spectrum?
Wow, so this movie was a wild ride, a great culmination of a lot that we've built up. And I still really hold true to the fact that the MCU really just feels like this long-running kind of television series. The highest budget television series that have ever existed, and we watch one episode, like, I feel like a couple times a year. So this really feels like a big season finale. You're getting all of your characters coming together. It felt like a lot like a season finale of a season of Game of Thrones. You got people from all over the place finally meeting up in one area, meeting each other for the first time. You get to see how they react. They go into battles together, and it's just a wild, fun ride. Like this was an amazing summer popcorn box office movie. This is going to just make a ton of cash. We already knew that ahead of time. But yeah, it's just all the emotions, like you said. You go through all of them. There's moments where I'm feeling tearful, and there's actually a moment where my eyes welled up, but not from sadness, was just from pure amazement. I won't spoil anything, but there's kind of like there's almost like a I don't want to say cavalry, because that's trying to say that there's a bunch of people coming, but there's kind of someone that shows up at the last moment and just with this big spectacle, and you're just like, holy crap. And my eyes are just like wide, and I'm just like my eyes are just like welling up, and I'm just like, I can't believe that this is happening right now. This is so amazing, and I think that's just the epitome of what this movie is. I feel like I still have kind of like the rose-colored glasses on. I feel like my opinion is not going to change a whole lot once those glasses fall off, but there's so much movie here to digest. I can't imagine anybody can thoroughly review this movie just this week, so this is going to seem like a shameless plug, but I would make sure that you're subscribed to the Superhero Slate podcast, because we talk about the news every week, and as every week unfolds, we'll roll out more and more about this movie and what it means about the MCU, and you'll be able to see us kind of digest our thoughts on this movie, because it's just so dense. There's so much here, and I just had a great time. Mm-hmm. They managed all of these characters very well. Everybody got I felt like the right amount of screen time. And I think a really good thing to do is don't just rewatch the MCU movies just so you feel like you don't miss anything and you can connect all the dots and you'd be like, oh, wait, that guy was from here and that was from there. Oh, I'm glad I watched these movies. No, I think you need to rewatch at least a nice handful of the MCU movies so you can kind of get back into the feeling of this universe. Because like I said, we watch one of these MCU episodes like maybe every 3 or 4 months now. So, you kind of get to dip your toe back in and then you're thrown out of it like 2.5 hours later. So yesterday, just before the movie, I watched Civil War and Doctor Strange. The weekend before that, I watched Avengers, Age of Ultron, and Winter Soldier. So I really made sure I was bathing in the MCU, and I really slotted back into it very well. I'd probably recommend maybe watching one of the Guardians just before you go into this, because I would say the Guardians and space of this movie takes up a decent chunk of the film. So I'm glad that space is still a big player in this. Well,
I mentioned yesterday, I think after watching this, Thor Ragnarok is definitely a must-have. So, and I agree. I definitely think, I agree with you on a lot of things. I just don't think that this is the culmination yet.
Oh, yeah.
I think this is what I would call the penultimate film. It's not the season finale, it's the episode before the finale that makes you like, oh, I have to tune in next week to watch the last one.
Which is funny, because if you are a Game of Thrones watcher, usually Game of Thrones is 10 episodes a season, and it's usually episode 8 or episode 9 where all of the, the craziness goes down. And then kind of like the final episode is kind of like, more of the like emotional, shocking moments. So, Chris, I'm really afraid I'm going to spoil something here, so yeah. I think we just got to go ahead and throw up the spoiler warning and just jump into this movie. There's so much to talk about. We made sure that we were jumping in front of these microphones as soon as we possibly could. There's no way we decided that we could wait until Sunday to talk about this. So, Chris, I just have to say, spoiler here, what a shocking ending. I knew what I was seeing wasn't going to be permanent for the most part, but still, my jaw has literally never dropped like that before. Like, you see on movie posters, they'll put up a quote from a critic that says jaw dropping, and you just think like, oh, it's a pretty exciting movie. Like, no, literally my jaw dropped as soon as Thanos snapped those fingers. That's a really iconic moment in the Infinity Gauntlet storyline. So once I saw that finger snap and the screen turned white, my jaw was gap the whole rest of the movie.
The credits were gonna roll?
Oh my god, I kind of thought that they did, and I was like, please don't do this, please don't do this to me, please don't do this to me. So when he snapped those fingers, I was like, I think I even like maybe mouthed it when I was thinking. I was like, oh my god, they did it. He got to snap his fingers. I was like, that's an undoable action, at least from what we've seen so far and what I've read in that omnibus that I have on my bookshelf of Infinity Gauntlet. So I was just amazing. I can't believe that they did it. And then we start to see one after one, the music totally drops out. We see these heroes dropping, and I'm just like, oh my god.
It was like 5 or 10 more minutes of just like,
yeah,
you like who's gonna make it? You don't know who's gonna make it at all.
Exactly. And at the start, I thought this was gonna be permanent, because they really hit this on the nail at the very beginning when they definitively kill Loki in front of you. It's gruesome. They show his dead corpse. They even say there's going to be no resurrection here, and he's dead. Like, we finally get like it's like the one of the greatest MCU villains killing another MCU villain, and it really set the tone. So when we see these deaths throughout the movie, you know that they take some weight. So you start to see people like Bucky fade away, and you're just like, oh no, Bucky. But then you think, okay, well, maybe his arc's done. Maybe we won't see Bucky anymore. And you see these other characters. But I have to admit, once I saw Black Panther fade away, I was just like, oh, okay, none of this is permanent. There's no way that they're just going to kill off T'Challa when they've already announced Black Panther 2. You know, his movie made just a crap ton of money to begin with. And then so when people, like, even though it was very emotional, when Peter faded away into dust, I knew that stuff wasn't permanent, but it was still shocking to see it. And that was just a crazy emotional moment. And then when it ends with Thanos looking at the sunset and then the credits roll, I just like look over to my wife and I'm just like, where's my after credit scene? I need my and then the after credit scene still didn't make things better. It just set up the Captain Marvel movie, and I was like, oh my god, what is going on? So obviously, in a world where the time gem now exists, I think we assume that that's going to roll back the clock and at least save all these people that have sequels scheduled. So I guess maybe that's one of the downsides of knowing so much about the MCU. We talk about it every week, that we're not silly, we're not going to fall for this stuff, but damn, was it emotional.
Well, I think the stakes are still there because I don't think it's the time stone that will revert everything. I think they just pulled that trick literally right before he got the gauntlet completed, right? I don't think they're going to pull that trick together. I think that someone else is going to have to wield that gauntlet and snap their fingers and undo everything. I don't think it's a time gem will fix everything.
Oh, I didn't think about that. That's clever.
So what to me is, while they may bring them back, it may not be the same people coming back. Like, their personalities may be tweaked a little bit when they come back. Just because, I mean, again, I think that'd be a way to do it, because say Captain America came on and snapped his fingers, right? Maybe he's the one who gets the gauntlet. I don't know. If he brings back Spider-Man, he's going to bring back the Spider-Man he knew, which was the Civil War one. You know, not the Tony Stark suit version. But, what I like about that scene, Mike, as well, is that they didn't linger on the finger snap. It wasn't a slow motion finger snap. It was Thanos dying very, very wounded, saying you should have aimed for the head.
Badass
Bam.
line.
and that kind of ties into one of the bigger characters in this. From start to finish, I think he had one of the better arcs is actually Thor's journey in this, because I know the exact moment you're talking about earlier, when Thor arrives on the battlefield in Wakanda.
Ooh, a Stormbreaker.
Via his own generated Bifrost, and is able to save most of the people there. Really quickly in their diary, bringing Rocket and Groot to the battle with them to Earth for the first time. Fantastic. And watching him unleash his power on those Outriders as they rush in the gates was just
my gosh.
fantastic.
Yeah, it was just intense, and like that was that moment where I was just welling up, and I was just like, oh my god, this is amazing. I knew Thor would show up to save the day a little bit, but it's so cool. And then oh my god, this is going to be the whole review. It's just us just like, oh my god.
Reliving, oh my god.
Like, when Bucky picks up Rocket and they're doing that 360 rotation shoot, it's just like, oh my gosh. I clapped. I literally clapped when I saw that because it was so amazing. I loved the theater reactions in this movie. Whenever somebody would like show up at the last moment to like save somebody's life, the theater would erupt into applause. When Tony got shivved in his side by Thanos, there was literally a girl like just singled out in the front of the theater that went, oh my god, like she out loud said that, and like we were all just like shocked. But if you wait a couple seconds, you see that it is just a flesh wound on the side. If it just went straight through his body, that'd be maybe a little different. But yeah, everybody was worried. I mean, I was shocked when Gamora died. I thought Nebula was gonna swing in at the last second, and maybe she would do the sacrifice play or something like that, or maybe just the act of Thanos willing to kill Gamora would be enough to get the Soul Stone. But she could still technically live. So seeing her dead on the ground, I was like, wow. They're really going all out in this movie.
So several months ago, I read this like breakdown of scenes from Infinity War, and I'm like, none of these are real. That was actually one of the scenes.
Oh, really?
So I was like, no, they couldn't have been right. They no, and then it was. But I think, just to talk about the Gamora death scene, like Thanos is very, he's he's not just a big bad in this villain. He's probably, I would put him better above Loki in terms of Marvel villains, in terms of sympathy. Like, he's actually, like, he doesn't want to kill Gamora, but he's like, I did this, I didn't follow through once before, I have to do it to save the universe. Like, he really wants to save the universe, you know? Because at the end of the movie, after he snaps his fingers, gets what he wants, he just goes to farming. Like, he has his, like, scarecrow of armor, like he does in the comic book, and he's just living on a planet. Like, he's not trying to conquer the universe. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, he's
not like, I don't want you to bend to my will. I want to save the universe from eating itself away.
Yeah, he's an interesting villain because he's not really relatable. I don't think anybody can really relate to what Thanos has gone through in his life, but he has very clear motivations for what he's doing, which is usually like the biggest hurdle for me in movies, where like it's got to be believable for what either character on the screen is doing. And I understood what he wanted. Like, he's a madman, you know, he just wants to cleanse the earth. It's kind of like one of those, like when you see a human villain on Earth that's just like, oh, we got to reboot this whole planet, this is all crazy, so I'm just going to nuke it, and then we'll grow from the ashes like a phoenix. It's just like, okay, like whatever. But when like a giant alien from space does it on a universal scale, it's just kind of like, well, okay, this is pretty badass. I'll dig what Thanos is doing here. But yeah, I like the emotional moments that he got to have with like Gamora throughout the movie, because it does make him feel more and more like a character, not just kind of like this obelisk that's just kind of walking through the scene and like punching people. They did a really good job setting him up in the very beginning, where he has all of these characters around him on Thor's ship, just like destroyed and decimated. He kills not Luther, that's the character's name of what he played.
You're thinking of Heimdall, who does not have
Heimdall,
the Soul Stone, you sons of bitches.
Yeah, that was, I think, one of my favorite things about the movie, is that the Soul Stone just wasn't really anywhere, kind of. Like, everybody had all these theories about, oh, the Soul Stone's been in Cap all this time, or, oh, no, it's Heimdall because he has yellow eyes, or, no, the Soul Stone is, like, just, it's more of a feeling, it's more of an ethereal thing that's just going to appear. It's just like, no, you're all wrong. It was just on some random planet guarded by the Red Skull. Who expected to see that guy? That was amazing.
So that was really cool. I thought it was like a personified version of Death at the first. Mm-hmm. And then there's a Marvel character called the Unseen. I thought it was him. Then it's the Red Skull, and I was like, oh my god, like, mind blown right before like this big emotional scene.
Yeah,
that was also not Hugo Weaving, if you want to know. That's actually comedian Ross Marquand.
I wonder if maybe they couldn't get Hugo Weaving back, or if there was scheduling conflicts.
No, he doesn't want to come back. He said he was pretty much done. Yeah.
Wow, I feel like that's a poor decision.
Even if they would have just got him for voice acting, like that,
yeah,
like that would have been fine. But they got someone else who does celebrity impersonations to actually get him. So
either way, I didn't notice the difference, but I watched a couple kind of MCU look back videos online before I went and saw this movie, and someone did point out like, oh yeah, when Red Skull he kind of looked like he died, but actually he went
through the portal.
He like evaporated kind of with like the cube, so like there was never really a definitive death for him. So when he showed up, I was just like, oh yeah, that's right, there you are, brother, we see ya. So that was really cool to see him pop up again. So yeah, it's great seeing all these threads kind of like come back through, and just all of these great moments. I think my favorite moments is when the characters finally get to meet each other. Like, it's kind of like you're left in awe when you're looking at Star-Lord and Iron Man on the screen together. Or you're in awe when you see like Captain America fighting alongside like the Black Panther. Even though technically you got to see them share screen time in Civil War, it's still just a really awesome thing to see. And then you see Thor show up back on Earth, and like Rocket's there, and like he keeps calling him a rabbit, and it's just, I love all this.
He calls him rabbit the whole time.
Yeah, I just love all this playful banter, and yeah, that's what I really wanted to see, because it's just payoff after payoff after payoff after payoff of seeing these characters run into each other. It's just like, oh my god, the last 10 years, not of just movies, of the last 10 years of my life are paying off in front of me on the screen, and it's just a fun, it's like the best theme park ride that is never going to be able to recreate it again, you know?
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, well, maybe not till the next one.
Yeah, maybe.
To be honest. So I think there's a couple things here. Steve and Tony never officially talked to each other again because Bruce made the call on the phone, actually, if you watch it. So Nebula and Tony are stuck on Titan because they're the only people left there, by the way. I think all the Guardians but Rocket were killed by the end. I thought it was really cool seeing Peter Dinklage, a little person, as a giant. He was the biggest character in the movie. Yeah,
that was interesting because when they first reveal his face, you kind of only see about half of it because he has this long hair covering it and a beard. And I was like, wait a minute, is that? And then they cut back to Thor, and then I kind of hear all of this kind of chitter-chatter around the theater, and then we get a clear look at his face, and I was like, holy shit, Peter Dinklage.
And that's who I said he was. He was Eitri, the guy who makes the hammers for Thor. So I felt pretty good about that. And yeah, that was a really cool scene about, making the hammer. Thor got his eye, so technically all the marketing wasn't wrong because he got that eye that Rocket has been talking about since the first Guardians movie.
Yeah, that was great. It's like, how much for that gun? And he's like, it's not for sale. How about that arm? Oh, I'm going to get that arm. That was just a great moment that was just built up since the first Guardians movie, I felt like. I think one of my favorite little moments that maybe might get looked over just because there's so much happening in this movie. I love the part where teenage Groot becomes the handle for Stormbreaker. The whole time he's just being this shitty little teen, just hanging out, just playing his video game. I don't even remember what the game was, but I just
Galaxy Defender.
Yeah. And then he just sees the piece of Stormbreaker there, and then he forms the handle. And I love that because that's a legacy that hopefully Thor gets to continue through. I don't really know if there's going to be a Thor 4. I don't know where we're going to see Thor again, maybe without the Guardians. But I just love the fact that whenever I see Thor holding Stormbreaker, he's holding a little bit of Groot there. I thought that was a really cool kind of sacrifice play for Groot, even though it's kind of not really a sacrifice. He just had to deal with a little bit of pain while he put it together. But I was like, oh, that's so cool because I don't know a whole lot about the origins of Stormbreaker, but I would assume the handle's not made. So I was like, that's some really cool lore that the MCU kind of gets the add to kind of these heroes, where it's not just kind of like, oh, well, we couldn't get an actor for this, or we don't have the X-Men, so the lore for Scarlet Witch is going to have to be the gem. It's like, no, the lore for Stormbreaker is Groot's hand. Like, that's just cool. That's something that's just clever.
In the comics, actually, Stormbreaker is just a separate hammer Odin makes for Beta Ray Bill. So, and actually, it's all new, which was cool. Like, creating a whole new thing was really awesome. I've got to say, I really enjoyed seeing the I guess, Captain America's little team come together to save the Vision the first time, because they wiped the floor with those children of Thanos, Proxima Midnight and Corvus Glaive, and they're like, what's going on here? Like, why are we getting beat by this well-oiled machine, you know what I'm saying?
And that was a great moment, just because I thought their emotional relationship, Vision and Scarlet Witch, actually worked pretty well. We see them in this movie at the start in this hotel room. They're just kind of falling in love with each other. They kind of bond over their mutual experience of the Mind Stone. They're coming together. Vision put his fleshy skin suit on, so he's looking more and more human. And then they're just like out on the town walking around Scotland, and then all of a sudden, very brutally, they start getting their asses kicked, and you're just like, holy crap. Like, get out of there, Scarlet Witch, fly away. And she keeps trying, and they keep getting beat up. And I was just like, guys, we just saw Loki die. I'm really nervous right now. And then even though we saw this moment in the trailer a little bit, you see that train fly by, and they're looking behind us like, oh, who's back there? Oh, who's back there? That's pretty much my whole experience of this movie. It's just like, okay, they're looking off screen. Who are they looking at? Who haven't we seen in a while? Who's about to show up and save the day? And then he grabs that spear, and then fucking, like, oh man, there's gonna be some swearing in this podcast. Sorry. Steve Rogers just comes in, starts kicking ass, and man, Steve Rogers, I've said before, he is my all-time favorite hero in the MCU. He's so cool. He's so badass. He's so composed. I love his fighting. And even without his shield, he's still a badass. And I was expecting that shield to show back up, maybe in the 11th hour. So I think we're just going to have to save it for Avengers 4. I think Tony still has it hidden somewhere. So, yeah, just seeing him kick ass and with that badass beard, copying Thor a little bit.
Well, it also paid off later when, Black Widow and like all the girls fought in the final battle. Like Black Widow, Okoye, and Scarlet Witch were all fighting there in the Proxima Midnight in the ring and stuff. So that was really cool to see, like that kind of, I guess, grudge, the female grudge match carry on, and she's like, oh yeah, you're not gonna win this time, and she totally got splatted by one of those big rolling machines. So that was, yeah. I mean, it's cool to see all these things set up early on, pay off later. Yeah. It's not just action for action's sake. Like, they are building these either good connections or bad connections with their headbutting throughout the whole thing. And I want to talk a little bit about the Black Order. I think they kind of a little bit got the shaft, except for Ebony Maw, but he also had the most like dialogue in the movie. But it was cool to see Peter's like, oh, ever see the movie Aliens?
Yeah, that old movie. He's always talking about these old movies.
The old movie Aliens, and it sucked him right out the air. Yeah, I thought... did you ever read the Infinity Event from Marvel Comics?
I think I read the first couple issues, and then I was intimidated by how many more that there were, and I was like, I don't have the time for this.
there were six. There were 6 issues, Mike. So there's not a lot. I don't think.
I thought there was like a couple like omnibuses. I thought there were some thick collections. Maybe it was just more of the overarching story that bled out into the other comics.
There were some other times, but just the main event. In one of them, the Cole Obsidian, which is the big guy with the hammer. Shows up in Wakanda to get one of the stones, and that's when actually Black Panther he did it in the scene. He jumped up and hit him in the head, taking on the big guy. He's like, soon to be your new king. He didn't say that, but it was really cool to do that. So
I think now that we're talking about the Black Order, you know, I'm gonna have to digest this movie for a while. So there's not a whole lot of things that bugged me in this movie, but there's one I wish. Who was kind of the female one with the horns?
Proxima Midnight.
I wish she had the kind of more human facial features. She didn't look quite like Squidward did over there. So I kind of wished maybe there could have been a human face there. And because it all looked like motion capture, very good motion capture. A lot of people worked on this movie. I'm not saying it was bad, but I just felt like you have a face there that's about 80% human. You know, all you got to do is just put some horns on her and then maybe CG around her eyes and nose to kind of blend everything together. But I'm pretty positive all of the Dark Order from head to toe was digital. So it would have been nice maybe to have a little practical effects in there, because we had a lot of actually close-ups on her face. I felt like with the Dark Order, with the big guy, it was just kind of all medium and wide shots. I don't even really remember what his face looks like. So Ebony Maw, we got a little bit closer. So I thought maybe with these characters where we got kind of up close, especially with their intense eyes, maybe if they could have had maybe an actor behind there a little bit, some flesh, maybe with a little bit of paint on it, I could have attached myself to him a little bit more. But I mean, that's just a little nitpick.
I don't really want to attach to them. They were just kind of there to be thrown around a little bit at the end.
It was nice that they weren't just kind of these god tier level characters where they had to just go to the ends of the earth to kill them. It's just like the reason that they were so good was because they're highly trained and they got the jump on all these heroes. So once they kind of figured out how they worked, yeah, you could just blow them out of an airlock and they would just freeze to death out in space. Just because they're aliens doesn't mean that they're like unbeatable. So I like that aspect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, what I think was interesting also is the Hulk's arc in this, which ties into the Cole Obsidian fight at the end there, where Hulk comes in, surprises everybody, beats up Thanos a little bit, and then gets totally whooped by Thanos, and refuses to come out the rest of the movie, which there are actually figures and toys of the Hulk busting out of the Hulkbuster armor for sale, Mike.
Yeah, and there's
removed that whole thing from the movie,
and also that iconic shot from the trailer where all the heroes are running through like the kind of jungle of Wakanda, and you see the Hulk running back there.
The money shot never happened.
So Marvel is going out of their way to really, really throw you off your axis before you go into these films. And I think one of the biggest things about this film that was thrown off of his axis is they definitively told us, I think maybe at some point last year, like, oh no, this isn't a part 1 and part 2. No, I know we announced it like that at that big event where we announced all these movies and we said we're going to do Infinity War part 1 and then part 2 a year later. No, actually, they're going to be their own separate individual movies. You know, they're going to have their own payoffs at the very end. They're not part 1, part 2. It's like such bullshit.
No, this is I disagree entirely. This is a whole standalone movie They're going to have movies in between.
Well, what I was going to say, the caveat I was going to say is it's not as big of a cliffhanger as we've seen in other popular movies. It's not like the part 2 of Deathly Hallows of Harry Potter, and it's definitely not like the split in half movie that like was the Hunger Games. Those are the only really 2 movies I think I've seen with part 2s. So I would say if you're going to do a part 1 and part 2, you do it like this. So I won't hit them on making it a part 1 and part 2. It just kind of felt like they were backtracking their statement a little bit, and so it was kind of like, oh yeah, this is a big cliffhanger. So that's I
think it's only a cliffhanger because we know there are other movies coming out. If you remove that knowledge, this could end and the Marvel Cinematic Universe could go forward and that would be it.
Yeah, but I think it's impossible to remove that knowledge. I think Marvel makes it very apparent by announcing these movies so far ahead of time. Oh, that there's more coming out there. So,
but there can be more movies here. Spider-Man's, I guess, is the exception, but Sony announced that rather than Marvel did. So, I mean, if there's not a second Black Panther movie announced. There's nothing.
Yeah, they've announced the second Black Panther. They did it like a week or so after the movie came out.
No, they said they want to work on it. Nothing is confirmed.
I'm almost.
There's gonna be one, but there's nothing. Tell me the release date, Mike. Tell me the release date.
Well, of course I don't know the release date. You can announce stuff without a release date.
No. If it's no release date, they've not announced it. There's nothing out there saying Black Panther. Yes, they said it's coming probably, but nothing saying for sure. So I'm going to disagree wholly that this is a part 1, part 2, because you can stop right now, make more Marvel movies. Ant-Man and the Wasp, we don't know how that's going to tie into this.
Yeah, I'm really curious. That was one of the big questions I had coming out of the movie. And I was just like, I feel a little bit bad for Ant-Man and the Wasp, because how on earth do you follow up this big bombastic movie with like, oh, you're going to have a couple characters that literally shrink in size and maybe get big. They're going to be just dealing with probably like heist level things. I'm curious where they set the movie. They could be really ballsy and set it after this big just torturous, I don't know what you want to call it, extinction level event almost. That would be kind of curious, but I would almost expect maybe one of these 3, either Pym or Lang or Wasp, to kind of disappear. So I have a feeling it's not going to be set after this movie. So I'm wondering where that goes. And then Captain Marvel set in the 90s. I have a strong feeling that Captain Marvel is going to have a post-credit scene that like hooks up with her finding Tony Stark on like a random planet or something like that. But looping back around to this part 1, part 2 thing, it's almost kind of a moot point, just because we like to compare this so often to like a long-running TV series, and TV seasons always end on a cliffhanger, almost always, to get you excited for the next season, or sometimes even on an episode-based level. So I'm really not too upset, because if I think about this as a TV series, I'm just like, oh man, I'm chomping at the bit. You know, it's like a Sunday night HBO show. I can't wait until next week, but unfortunately we have to wait until next year. I guess it could be worse. They could have put it maybe 2 or 3 years out, but man, I'm so excited for that next film. I just got to see how they fix things. I'm really curious what happens after Avengers 4 now, even further, because I think this is a great way to loop mutants into the universe, because I think it would just be weird if all of a sudden they were just like, oh yeah, mutants have been around for a long time. You guys just haven't seen them. We've been in the shadows. Just, we haven't been on any of your radars. We've kept our powers to ourselves. I was like, I don't really find that very believable, but maybe if Steve grabs the gauntlet, snaps his fingers, it kills him because he's only a human, but he puts everything back to normal. Maybe everything's not quite back to normal. Maybe there's some human DNA out there that got just shifted just a little bit, and now mutants are all of a sudden a thing. So we'd kind of have this kind of new experience of jumping into an X-Men mutant universe where the very first mutant didn't appear centuries ago, like Apocalypse in like some sort of pyramid. Maybe the first mutant like appeared in like the year 2020, right after Captain America died. And then we kind of have these really, really young fledgling X-Men that slowly come together and build the X-Men. And maybe we don't even ever see the X-Mansion or something like that. So I think this is a really clever way to bring in the Fox franchise for sure.
I guess. I mean, I'm not really worried about that because I trust that they're going to find a way. And if it's not for another 3 years or tied into Infinity War,
it'll be a little while.
I don't even think if it needs to be tied into it, because in the Ultimate Marvel universe, mutants were created by humans. rather than genetic modification or like I guess evolution. But
Yeah,
I
but
mean,
those mutants had been around for a while.
well,
so
just since World War II.
Yeah, well, still, that's a while. I can't imagine there's a Professor Xavier that's been on Earth since World War II in the MCU. So there's going to be some sort of reality shifting, time bending stuff that these stones are going to do. But yeah, I think they have like this great tool out there to kind of really kind of refine and point the arrow in the MCU going forward. With Spider-Man 2.
Well, I think to me, what's interesting is the next movie. I predict the title will be called Thanos Quest.
Avengers Thanos Quest?
Yeah, because that was actually that was actually the very first series Thanos appeared in collecting the stones.
Yeah, that sounds like a really bad movie title, though.
I mean, it very well may be, but everyone's like, "Oh, it'll be Infinity Gauntlet." Well, that doesn't make any sense anymore.
Yeah.
So, I mean, what I imagine the next one, I think all those people who quote unquote died are probably have been captured inside the Soul Stone. So we will see them in the next movie.
Yeah, that could be very possible.
Because I think that was Gamora's soul, her like child version in the Soul Stone after he snapped his fingers. Mm-hmm. And so if they're in the Soul Stone, we might be able to see them, before the end of the movie when everything's just kind of put back to normal. But also, I think the whole point of the next one will be trying to track down Thanos to restore everything and then destroy the gauntlet in and of itself.
Yeah, maybe if not snapping the fingers takes everything back to normal, but maybe the act of destroying all the stones. It's hard to imagine that anybody thinks that they could store these stones safely around the universe. I think something's going to come together. Maybe they'll go to that dying dwarf star and like put it in that forge and melt the stones or something like that. Or they'll just like cram them all together and just like make them explode, because Scarlet Witch was kind of attempting that at the moment.
Well, she did blow up one completely.
Yeah, that is true.
So they are destroyable in their current iteration.
Yeah, you just got to destroy the time stone first. That's the first one you got to get rid of, because if you don't, they can all just come back.
Yeah, but that brings me up to time stone. Doctor Strange. We haven't talked about his kind of story arc where he looked at over 1 million iterations of the future.
I thought it was like 14 million or something like that.
It was it was a very large number that I don't remember. Yeah. But only one of them where they win, and then after they were kind of all beaten by Thanos, he was like, "This is the end game now." So I think he knows they're in the iteration where they win. This is one of the start of those points. So
yeah, I haven't had very many hours to go out there on the internet and look at theories, but one strong one that I saw was Doctor Strange saw the finale that ended well, and he saw Tony Stark there. So he saw Tony about to die, and he was just like, Tony can't die because he is in the very end. Maybe he's the one that snaps his fingers with the gauntlet. Maybe he's the one that tracks it down. So he's like, Tony has to live. I have to give up the time stone. So that makes sense to me. But Doctor Strange faded away. He's gone, so we can't just straight up ask him what the finale looks like. And also, it could be one of those things where, like, if you know what the finale is, it can't happen because it's like a time paradox type thing.
He did tell everyone on Titan, and only one person was left of that group, and that is Tony. So Tony will be the only one who knows, like, we have to do things this way to win or else, and he's going to have to prove that makes sense to everybody who doesn't believe him on Earth, because everyone's like, no, you fucked up last time. Why would we believe you now, kind of thing.
Yeah, maybe. But it was kind of cool that we didn't see all of the characters kind of come together. They did save a little bit for Avengers 4, so we never saw Star-Lord come to Earth. So we still could have my moment that I predicted on the podcast the other week where he shows up blasting I'm back from outer space on his Milano speakers. So that's still a possibility, maybe just a different location under different circumstances. So I like that still there's even a grander experience still in front of us where all of the characters are on screen together. Now, I don't know if it'll necessarily be terrestrial Earth, maybe it'll be in some sort of cosmic zone or realm, because they have to go find the gauntlet. They all have to get there. And even we're probably going to have like a ragtag group that gets there. Maybe they smash the Soul Stone and then all of their heroes come back, and then they all get together and they start wailing on Thanos. The thing is, when you have all of these characters that are like melee combat fighters, they don't necessarily have all beams that they can shoot and focus at one thing. I would imagine there's going to be some sort of horde, in their future in Avengers 4 that they might have to team up and fight again. I thought the Outriders were really cool and really brutal. I love that the way that they animated them. Like when Steve was like all up in their grill, like fighting them and punching them, I felt like, oh shit, watch it. Like if you don't like move your neck just the right way, they're literally going to bite your head off. So,
and they were just killing each other to get through the shield. So,
yeah, they were. So you knew that you can't reason with them.
Yeah, I mean, what I think is important to notice here, I thought the big main 3/4 of the Avengers would not be, I guess, actually, the original team, minus not seeing Hawkeye, is still alive.
Yeah, that's kind of...
And I did not think they would be the ones who made it out of this. I thought Thanos... I mean, again, Thanos isn't... He's not holding a grudge against anybody. He's not doing extinction level events. He's just doing half of everything, and it's random.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's a very... I would figure he would purposely try to not get the people who almost tore the glove off his hand on Titan another chance. And now, I think, he's got a stronger chance with... they've got a stronger chance with Tony, Cap, Thor, and Hulk, Black Widow, and Hawkeye getting back together. So
yeah, and it'll just be kind of sweet and nice to kind of see. I don't think they'll necessarily do that same sweeping circle shot of all of them together again, but I was like, oh, that's cool, to see them all on the screen together, maybe going after the gauntlet, maybe they all get in a spaceship together. I'm really looking forward to Steve Rogers' reaction to being in space for the first time. That'll be really interesting. But man, yeah, this movie is just dense, chock full of just so much fun. I feel like I have to go see it again because so much happens in this film. I would say if any characters maybe didn't get quite the amount of screen time that they maybe deserved was maybe Black Panther. But I think we set the kind of finale in Wakanda, so at least we're getting a lot of that. We just saw the Black Panther movie. You can get that on digital next week, I believe. So I feel like maybe they kind of balanced the movie. I'm sure the assembly cut of this film is 6 hours long, everything that they shot. So maybe they're just, as the editing process was going through, they were just take out this little conversation between Black Panther and the Winter Soldier, cut it down a little bit because his movie just came out. And maybe they're just oh, that rocket joke is hilarious. We got to leave that in. We haven't seen the Guardians for a couple of years, so leave that there. And of course, push Mantis off to the side of the poster, just because that's where Mantis always is. I don't know if anybody else notices that because I'm always putting images together for the podcast, but Mantis is always relegated to the tiniest corner and edges. But I thought Vision had a very big pivotal role in this movie. I mean, he ended up having the last stone. I think everyone assumed the Soul Stone was going to be the last one left. And in the trailer, we see Steve holding back that gauntlet, and he only has a couple stones. But as we found out, no, they did that just to throw us off because they wanted us to see that scene. He only had one stone left, so that was a really important moment, more than we thought it was going to be. So yeah, I thought Vision was fleshed out really well, and he was just totally ready to make the sacrifice play because he's a very analytical, mathematical person. He knew that if this is going to save literally the universe, it's just my kind of artificial life for all of existence. Yeah, that's an easy play for me, but I gotta find a way to make it okay with the woman that I love. So I love that emotional connection.
If Shuri is still alive, he may be able to be brought back because she swiped her screen away before Corvus got there. So I think she was doing something and saved it for later because she didn't just run away. It looks like she saved it. So with the corpse of Vision there and all grayed out, they may be able to bring him back to life.
Yeah, I could see that. That would be pretty cool.
Because they've talked about that. He's he's not just the stone. He's a bunch of other things in there.
Yes, as I've stated before in previous episodes of Superhero Slate, he has a lot of different things. So maybe that actually got a little bit of payoff. My annoyance of how Vision was made, but man, this movie, it's just a whole lot to take in. My mind is still reeling from it. I think before we started recording, I told you that my wife and I both had dreams last night with MCU characters inserted into them. I don't remember the whole plot or synopsis of whatever I dreamed last night, so I don't think I could replay it for you, and nor would anyone want to listen to that. But I think that just goes to show you that this is gonna sit with you at least for the whole weekend. I mean, I gotta go see this movie again. I want to see it with a new audience every time. I want to see how people react. I mean, that's crazy. And like now I don't have to worry too much about, if people are eating jalapenos next to me or whatnot. So, yeah, I don't know if I could rank this. It feels weird to rank it almost, because it doesn't feel, to me, I know you feel a little differently, but for me, it doesn't feel like a movie that kind of sets alone on its own. I feel like there's so much build up into it. There's still a second part to this movie where we kind of really get the conclusion of the story in this. So I think still my favorite movies in the MCUs are kind of the standalone ones, like the Winter Soldier, that's just kind of telling a very condensed story. All these movies have ties that kind of dangle off of them. So you can't get just something totally condensed except for maybe Iron Man 1 or possibly The Incredible Hulk. So I think the Winter Soldier one is still my favorite. The first Guardians is still amazing. This movie is almost just, it's a different category. Like this is a great Avengers movie, that's for sure. It's weird to think that this is the third Avengers movie, because Winter Soldier just felt so much like the Avengers, but it's just like, no. When you go Avengers, this is what it feels like.
Civil War, you mean, not Winter Soldier.
Yeah. Either way, you know what I was talking about.
Winter Soldier is more standalone than that. So, yeah, I mean, it does feel like it. But I think, it is an Avengers. But the Avengers are essentially the sum of the parts before them each time. And this is, like you said, it's hard to rank it, but it is a culmination. It is an addition of everything. This is the payoff. This is the patience. And you don't even have to know the minutia of everything. But, like, it... built, like, if you've seen Doctor Strange, you're gonna get a little bit of that. Like, you're gonna appreciate his parts more. If you've seen Guardians, you're gonna appreciate the part where it just says space and it's playing the music when they're flying through, when they enter. Seeing Tony Stark's arc of, like, why is his chest reactor on him in a battery, not in his chest, kind of thing. You know what I'm saying? Let's
talk about that bleeding edge armor for a second. So I think we're kind of starting to see the twilight of Iron Man. It's hard for me to imagine him in the MCU still in another 10 years, maybe in some sort of cameo capacity, but I think Robert Downey Jr. is probably just going to be wrapping up his stay in the MCU, which I think is okay. He's done like a really great job, but his armor is just becoming less and less realistic to me. Like it was rooted in such technology at the very beginning, and now it's these nanoparticles on him that can morph into these different weapons, which are really badass. Really cool to see him fight with them, but he's kind of turned into kind of like this, from this scientist into almost this like weird super powered hero that has these weird morphing abilities. So I feel like we've reached the apex of the Iron Man armor. I don't think if we went anywhere beyond this armor, I could possibly believe it. I've always liked the Marvel comics and the Marvel heroes because there's always been a little bit of plausibility to them. Like the DC is all kind of like these god magic type powers. So I think I've reached my limit on the Iron Man armor. If they push it past this, I'll just have to kind of glaze my eyes over and just like watch, and hopefully he does something cool with it.
But I mean, what would be next? I mean, having read the comic books, Extremis was in his blood. Bleeding Edge was, I think, after that, and then they kind of went backwards. So I wouldn't even know what the next one would be.
Yeah, like I don't think they can push it back, but yeah, I feel like, hey, I think we're pushing the possibilities of what one man can do with technology. Because if one man can do this, I feel like the whole shape of society and planet Earth would be totally different. Like the human race had reached like a new level of like existence that I can't quite rationalize.
How do you feel about Black Panther and Shuri and all their stuff, which is even more advanced than this?
Well, that stuff kind of makes just a little bit more sense because at least it's on a society level and it's all rooted in one specific kind of space metal. Tony, it's just like he built the Iron Man armor just with a box of scraps in a cave in the desert. So These are just little things that I'm just trying to like rationalize in my brain. So, I feel like it's an Avengers movie, so it's okay if they hit the gas. But, we're probably not going to see an Iron Man 4, so I probably don't have to worry about them pumping the brakes for that. So it's he'll cool.
Probably be cameo-ish in the next couple of movies.
So we got our Stan Lee cameo. Speaking of cameo,
that was very early too.
He went from riding on the bus to driving the bus, from Doctor Strange of writing. So he has the greatest little cameos. What did he say in that bus? What you've never seen?
You never seen a spaceship before?
Yeah, and I love Ned's little moment in the movie where he's just like, "Hey, make a distraction." He's, "We're all gonna die," or something like that.
Oh my God, is it aliens? Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm glad he got his little moment in there.
Yeah, I mean, all the characters they all felt good. I mean, some people, I've seen some reviews have been like, "Oh, there's not enough small character moments," but we've already built the character moments before this.
Yeah, where are you gonna put your character moments? Like this is a season of the MCU. Your character moments were in the smaller movies. This is the season finale. I just want to see Jon Snow kill a dragon, something like that. It is the
last Avengers movie of this year, Mike. We cannot hold anything back now.
Yeah, that is true.
And then we still have more characters to bring into the MCU. I mean, Ant-Man, Hawkeye. I mean, Nick Fury was there, but he wasn't really there. Captain Marvel. Who else were we missing here?
Well, I think probably we might see Hank Pym maybe join the MCU. Maybe not in a big moment, but I'd like to see him at least cross paths with Tony Stark since they have so much ire against him,
I bet that's going to be his wife because she's been cast as Michelle Pfeiffer, and she's been in the sub-universe, the micro-universe, for so long. She might actually have some idea on how to find this via, like, the micro-universe or something like that.
Oh, maybe. That would be kind of cool. Pulling all of their minds, the greatest minds together.
Yeah, because Doctor Strange is gone. We don't know where Wong is. We don't have no way to get through different universes except for her experience of living there for, 30 plus years. So
yeah, it seems like they're probably gonna save Adam Warlock for Guardians 3.
I don't think he's gonna show up at all. Yeah,
it would be weird to see him show up without really any context or explanation, especially since he was just introduced in a post-credit scene. So
it wasn't even him. It was just a pod.
Yeah, that's true. So we would see him for the first time, like, who's this gold man with these weird clothes that's from outer space? Captain Marvel is going to be a really fun movie. I'm really curious to see what her space adventures are like, how they hook up with Thanos, because we know she's going to cross Ronan, and Ronan has experience with Thanos. So I feel like we're going to get a little bit.
Ronan past. It's like Ronan in the 1990s. No.
Well, yeah, but Ronan in the 1990s still may have, seen Thanos before. They've probably met at like a villain pub somewhere and hashed out how they're going to kill people or something. So yeah, and Captain Marvel, what comes out is that a March release? I think
it's March or February. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like how Black Panther kind of kicked this off, much like that. So.
Well, I mean, the best thing to do, if I had to shamelessly plug our show one more time before I think we wrap up this, you can go to our upcoming release page on our website, and you can kind of see when all of these movies come out. And if you refer to the list, we have Captain Marvel, yes, coming out in March. So you can count the weeks. You can count it by weeks in between Captain Marvel coming out and the Avengers coming out May 3rd. Who knows if they'll pull the same stunt of pushing Avengers again until the very end of April. But yeah, Captain Marvel is definitely gonna tee up this next movie, I think, in a big way, because it's gonna be really space and big font lettering on the screen. I mean, that's how you find this gauntlet. So I would like to see, the Earth be included again, just because I feel like that's how you root it. That's how you get your audience really engaged in it. Save the planet, save Wakanda, save the human race, But yeah, if they all go to space and that's where they kill Thanos, that might be it. But Captain Marvel will be really cool. It'll be cool to see her show up. We'll get a new character, because like you said, what characters have we not seen yet? And it's like, well, we got Ant-Man and Hawkeye. I think literally everybody else was included. I don't know if villains are going to pop back up like the Abomination or something like that. That would be kind of cool, actually. Maybe if the Abomination did kind of crawl his way back onto the screen.
I think they kind of disown that movie a little bit. Like the history's there, but we don't talk about it. Because General Ross was in this movie, actually, as a hologram. Mm-hmm. And he was like, oh, that's court-martial, because he hung up on him. I don't know. I mean, to me, I think the next one is going to, if I was to put it, it's going to be, to me, I think it would be Thanos Quest, but I could be very wrong. but we have to wait. They didn't tell us at the end of the movie, Mike. They didn't.
Yeah.
I thought they would, and they didn't. So
yeah. Well, either way, I think a big point to note before we sign off here is the Time Stone. I'm glad I watched Doctor Strange before I went and saw this movie, because they made a point to say that the Eye of Agamotto, the Time Stone, when you use it for your own purposes to kind of undo things that have happened, there's a bill that comes due. You don't know what that's going to be. You don't know exactly, it's kind of cryptic when they say it in the film, but you can't just use the Time Stone willy-nilly without any what word am I looking for?
Ramifications.
Ramifications, exactly. So even if the Time Stone is used to undo all of this death, which is possible, how far back do you crank the Time Stone back? Is Loki going to come back alive? Is Gamora going to come back? I feel like Gamora is going to come back, just because Guardians 3 is going to be really weird if they're coming back with Yondu and Gamora dead. Like, it's just going to be a big cry fest. But if Cap or, maybe even Tony, or maybe they both somehow hold the glove up and snap their fingers and they both die and they bring everybody back, Gamora could come back because she's in the stone, but I think Loki's dead for sure. I don't think he's coming back. I think Tom Hiddleston's final check has been signed.
I mean, we don't know if there's a Thor 4 down the road. I mean, it's one of those things, we don't know where Captain America 4 is or Thor 4, so, I mean, it could go either way. The idea of the Asgardian mythology is that their whole lives are a cycle that ends with Ragnarok, and if Ragnarok kicked off how they kind of died there, it could restart and he could be recast because they have to grow up again. I don't know. There's a lot of things they could definitely do. I'm not gonna write anyone off permanently just yet.
Yeah, I don't
until the end credits of the next one, and even then, I'm like, money talks, man. They'll bring it back.
I'll go ahead and say I don't want any recasting. Maybe new people to take up mantles, but don't recast Thor. Maybe just bring in Lady Thor. Don't recast Iron Man. Just bring in what do they call her? Like Heart.
Ironheart.
Ironheart. Bring in
Iron. They don't have enough story or.
But but it's a lot.
I agree. I don't recast them, but I think you can replace it with another character. We didn't care about Iron Man 10 years ago.
Yeah, because believe it or not, Chris, if you look far enough into our future, past 10 years, past 20 years, past 30 years, when we're collecting, hopefully, our Social Security checks, the MCU will restart. They will recast our beloved characters. They'll make brand new movies with different storylines, and we'll look at the young whippersnappers and be like, these movies suck. When I was a kid, or when I was a young adult, I guess, these movies were good back in the 2000s. Now you got these random people being cast. That's not my Wolverine, even though Wolverine probably will be recast much sooner than that. So, this was an intense movie. It's definitely a milestone. It's a marker. You got to go see this movie, even I think if you've never even seen a superhero movie. Like, this is... I've talked about this on the show before. This is a piece of pop culture. This is something that's not just for the nerds. This is not just for people that like summer popcorn flicks. If you're
like
even
Footloose, you're gonna love this.
Is Footloose still the greatest movie ever?
It was never was.
Is Kevin Bacon there? But yeah, this is just a big, shiny piece of pop culture that you're just going to have to know. If you're just one of those people that just like those indie movies with subtitles and you're only ever paying attention to the Best Picture Oscar winners, like, this is a weird reversal.
Then you're not listening to the show, Mike.
Yeah.
I think we just need to talk to our audience. You're going to watch it. You're going to like it, I think. And
convince your parents to go see it. That's probably the more likely scenario. If you just have like a random parent that just doesn't go to the movies, just have them watch this. It'll just be a fun, good time.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like you need to watch a couple of them. Otherwise, they don't make sense. I guess the impact isn't as heavy.
They'll know what Spider-Man is. They'll have seen an Iron Man before on a billboard or a collectible cup. They'll be like, oh, hey, there's that man from the cup and the man from that cartoon show that my son watches. Well, this is fun. And I can't believe I didn't mention this. I feel like this movie is 80% choreographed action scenes. Like, this movie is jam-packed. They didn't They didn't hold anything back, as you like to say.
They didn't slow down, man. They start and they go.
Yeah, so it is hard to find moments in this movie to go pee. So all those little kind of character moments, they give them just enough time before somebody else gets punched in the face. Like I said, this is a roller coaster ride from beginning to end, literally jaw-dropping. It's hard to rank it. We're going to be sitting with this movie for a while, so make sure you're subscribed to the podcast. We're going to be dropping a news episode on Sunday. Chris, you are always the nice one that compiles all of our news for the week, and you have been holding off because you have been trying your best not to be spoiled. So we got a lot to talk about in the news Sunday. Heck, we got Venom. Venom's still coming out this year, which is technically of a little bit in the MCU.
Well, we don't quite know yet. Did you actually get a Venom trailer with yours?
No, I didn't.
I got the old Venom trailer.
Those bastards! Why are they
confused the hell out of me?
You know what? And I didn't get that Jurassic World trailer either, so I didn't actually have to watch that one that I felt like spoiled a bunch of the movie. So
I got
who
that.
Knows?
We got that.
Who knows? But yeah, this movie was it was a time. This movie is a time. Go see this movie and then hang out with your friends this weekend so you guys can just talk about it.
Yeah, that's true. If you guys have any thoughts, reviews, questions even, my wife did pose a good question to me, Mike. She said, can they regrow Groot from his handle on Stormbreaker since he faded away?
Oh, that's clever, but is that technically a different Groot? Because James Gunn did say that
could
the Groot that...
grow another Groot, I guess, is what she asked.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you could, right? Unless, like, Stormbreaker has some sort of magic that you can't break the handle. I don't know.
My thought is Groot knew what he was doing when he burned himself holding it, so he cut it off and, like, didn't make it a live version. Like, he can control what's live and what's not, but...
Yeah, because really, when Groot fights, I'm sure there's splinters all over the place. I mean, there was a scene in the movie where he uses his vines to go under the ground and grab Thanos, then he just breaks out of it.
Yeah,
so does that mean, like, a bunch of Wakandans can pick up these slivers and grow their own Groots?
I feel there'd be a lot more Groots all over the universe if this was the actual case.
Yeah,
so I was like, that's a good question, though. That was a good question.
You know, if you took that Groot language class like Thor did, we'd know a lot more about this.
That's true.
We could speak Groot and we could know what he says, but... Yeah, this movie's great. You got to go see it. Highly recommend it. It's going to make a crap ton of money. If you're not seeing it, what are you doing? Dig out from under that rock. Why are you listening to this podcast? We just spoiled everything. You're crazy.
Mike keeps talking, but if you have questions, comments, or anything else, write us in because I want to hear them. I want to know what you guys thought. And maybe if you do it this weekend, we can have it on Sunday and talk about it on our news show. So
I really want to hear dissenting opinions. I would love to meet the person that like really didn't like this movie or was underwhelmed. Like I want to know what their perspective was and what they were looking for. What were
your expectations? Did you like create some sort of fake movie in your head like Mike does on the weekly basis and did not meet those fake movies? So
yeah, that happens.
So anyways, thanks for listening, guys. We're here on a Friday doing our thing, so we'll be back Sunday. But if people want to know what you're up to, maybe if you see the second time, Mike, where can they find you at?
Well, they can find me at Mike Royer Design on Instagram and Twitter, and you can read my webcomics at pickledcomics.com. Chris, if people want to keep up with you, I know you're probably going to be in the theater like every other hour seeing this movie. If people want to keep track of your tallies on the wall of how many times you've seen this movie, where can they find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Valdan, VALDAN, or Instagram, Valdan87, according to Mike, if is to be believed. I'm going to post the full collection of my pops with all the MCU movies. So
nice.
I'm going to put that up. I actually picked up the box. I didn't get the collector core box. Came with Thanos and his little ship that he was in the whole movie.
Oh, okay.
And it's huge, man. I'll send you a picture of this, but it's pretty cool. You can also head over to Comic UI. I've been got a little teaser videos for the countdowns of all the movies you need to watch. And some interviews from C2E2. We put up one every new comic book day, every Wednesday, so we can space them out a little bit. So head over there. If people are listening for the first time, this is a review episode, but they want to know what we do every week, a news episode, Mike, where can they find us at?
Well, as always, please visit superheroslate.com. That is the place where you can find all the avenues we host our little show and to get our show notes. So if you are listening to a news episode and we're talking about trailers or leaked screenshots, things of that nature, you can just go to our show notes. We have a nice little bulleted list, and you can just click on any one of those, and you don't have to scour the internet for it. So that's superheroslate.com. And you can find our show on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Google Play Music, SoundCloud, TuneIn, Stitcher. You can like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter and Instagram. And if you want to get some merch of our our show, if you want to support, you can go to superheroslate.com/store. If you're a fan of the show, if you like what you're hearing, if you like what you're listening to, we love reviews, we love feedback, we love those likes, those retweets, those comments. We love those Apple Podcast reviews. So if you want to go leave us a review, drop us a comment in there, tell us who your favorite MCU character is and why. Mine's Captain America. I think he's awesome. He's even cooler with that beard. I wish I could grow a beard like that. Leave that in the iTunes comment. And if you want to be a super fan of the show, if you want to be a super fan of Superhero Slate, all you got to do to get that title is just share the show with a friend, share the show with a buddy, and we will be here every week talking about the latest news and the latest superhero movies and TV shows. I believe next on our list,
Deadpool.
Is it Deadpool? Yeah, so Deadpool's coming up, so you want to stay subscribed for that. We already bought our tickets, so stay tuned, everybody.
Yep, thanks for listening, and don't forget to snap those fingers.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks for listening, and don't forget to subscribe.
What does he say? I'll do you one better. How, Gamora?